is 9:30, and I call the meeting of September 13th, 2016 Board of Millcreek Supervisors to order. And if you would join me, please rise, and we'll recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'm going to move on to item number 3. As you probably noticed, we have a new face sitting up here with us. And on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, we're pleased to introduce Sydney Stitt, who is going to be our student ambassador this year. Serving on the board, of course, it's a non-voting role here with us. She'll be asked for comment on things and just an active part of our board here. This is our 3rd year of having a student ambassador from McDowell High School, and we're very pleased of the agreement and cooperation with the school district and the internship program at McDowell High School and those coordinators that helped make this happen. Here's a brief bio regarding Sydney. She is a senior at McDowell High School. Currently, her grade point average is 4.3. I think I had that for all my classes together, was 4.3 when I went there. But anyway, Sydney is a member of the National Honor Society and McDowell's Honors College program. She also participates in speech and debate, Model United Nations, mock trial, and plays varsity tennis. She currently works at the Cold Stone Creamery as a shift manager, and she hopes to be majoring in engineering at an accredited university and is looking into many of these choices: Vanderbilt, Duke, and Pitt. So you obviously are aware of the caliber of this young lady. So we want to welcome her to our board, and hopefully she'll be with us through the remainder of the school year, and whatever she goes on to on that, we hope that she had a good experience working with us. So we'll ask you for some comment a little bit later if you want to do that.
So qualified than us to be in here.
So anyway, we're going to move on to regular business right now. Item number 4, public comment on agenda items other than development or rezoning applications. Being none, we'll move on to the next item. Item number 5, approval of the minutes from our previous meeting of August the 23rd. Any additions or corrections? Do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll move approval.
Okay, do I hear a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. McGrath, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes. Approval of the bills. Item number 6. Any questions?
I'll move that we pay the bills.
Okay, do I hear a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay. Mr. McGrath, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Morgan?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes. Okay, item number 7, consideration of subdivision and land development plans. Grouse Hollow preliminary major subdivision. This is an extension granted from August the 23rd until today. Mr. Morris.
Planning Commission recommended approval at their July 5th meeting, and since that time we've been looking at the end of Arden Road, where the township has been provided additional right-of-way by the developer. That probably isn't enough. We'll have to seek some additional area from neighbors, but at least we have the start of a turnaround. The turnaround was constructed on the developer's property, so we have to do something different than what has been done.
Okay, so you're indicating there may need a correction somewhere on the later, not on the plan itself, but some future action. Possibly.
Correct. On the plan, he has shown that in phase 2 there will be additional right-of-way dedicated to the township.
Okay. Okay. Anybody here to speak on behalf of the application there? The developer here? And if you would state your name and address for the record.
David Baldwin, 1440 High Street.
Okay. And what can you tell us about this plan? That I mean, of course, we see the plan. Anything else that we need to know in regard to this?
I don't think that there's nothing that I would say that isn't explained on the plan, I guess.
Okay. Okay. Any questions from the board?
No?
No?
Well,
Okay.
we do have an issue with an existing turnaround that goes across a property line. We appreciate the right-of-way dedication and also the easement noted on the plan. One additional concern that was brought up to us by staff today was use of the turnaround at least through this year's paving season. I'm not sure what kind of legal prescriptions we would need, but we'd appreciate the ability to utilize the turnaround at least through, say, April of next year. Is that something you'd be open to considering?
The turnaround as is,
Yes.
yeah, that would be in phase 2, which we shouldn't get to anytime shortly, so.
Okay.
You know, on second thought, David, if you wouldn't mind, if we could continue to use that until phase 2 would be recorded, that could help us out.
Okay.
Because we would continue to use it, and the right-of-way that you have shown as dedicated wouldn't be dedicated until phase 2. So we'd do it all at once.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Okay.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak in regards to this matter? If you would, please come forward. If you would state your name, if you would sign there too, please.
Thank you. Lori Bednar,
Okay.
1209 Winesap.
Mhm.
It's my mom's property at the bottom of Arden Road that was being considered for potential right-of-way, and I just am now asking for clarification. It sounds like the developer is granting the necessary room for the turnaround, or the, I guess I'm just asking for clarification. Are they still looking for right-of-way permission from my mom's property on Arden, in addition to what the developer is providing?
Yes, we will.
As shown on that schematic that you
Correct.
provided? Okay. I would just ask that Mom has not given her approval yet, and you know, ideally, we would prefer not to have to give the right-of-way just from an aesthetic standpoint, because it revolves a nice piece of property at her side. So if there's any way that they can look at the other side of Arden's property, which is not quite as polished or wouldn't have as great as impact aesthetically wise, that would be Mom's preference.
Okay. Okay.
And Rick, you'll be working with the neighbors there to see
Yes, I
what we
will.
can, the best option.
Yes. And we have to keep in mind our snowplow trucks also. The wing, the plows are always on the right side of the truck.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else to speak in regard to this matter? Being none, I hear a motion.
I'll move approval.
Do I hear a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. McGrath, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes. Thank you. Item number 8, request for exemption from land development plan for Bonnell's Collision, 2570 West 26th Street here in Millcreek. Rick Morris.
We had a drawing submitted to us from Bonnell's Collision, and typically we would look at this and we would say, well, it doesn't need to go before the Planning Commission, and we would request an exemption from land development. However, in this case, we have an ordinance, subdivision and land development ordinance, that tells us if there are any problems in the area, then it doesn't necessarily have to have the exemption granted. Instead, it goes before the board to be reviewed. In this case, we believe that it does significantly alter the use of the premises, because there are parking problems in the area, and we've counted as many as 23 vehicles that have been parked in the area of the proposed extension of the building, and they're only showing 4 parking spaces that would be provided after. So 23 minus 4, they're losing 19 parking spaces in an area that is already congested and has parking problems. So it's our recommendation that this would go before the Planning Commission and go the full route rather than the exemption.
Okay. Okay, any questions among the board here? Any act on this?
All right, then I will move denial of the request for the exemption.
Okay, do I hear a second on that?
Is the applicant present?
Yeah. Is the applicant present here? I don't,
Oh,
yeah, I'm sorry. Mr. Matzak, please come forward. I'm sorry. I forgot you were involved with this.
Good
Okay,
morning.
sorry about that, Gary.
No, that's fine. I would say that we're asking to build a 3,000 square foot addition that is being constructed on impervious already, so we fit within the requirements of the exemption. And I understand Mr. Morris's concern. However, we provided a plan to the engineering office that outlines the 42 parking spaces shown, which meets the requirement of the zoning and the use of the building for the property.
Right. I understand. Okay. And I think the issue that really came forward here has to do with the parking. Is that correct, Rick?
That's correct.
There already is a parking problem here. I mean, and this is a kind of a mixed blessing here. At least this is my own observation, not that of the board. I'm just speaking for myself. Mr. Bonnell is a very successful businessman, and obviously so when you see the amount of work that he does there. And you know, the amount of vehicles that are parked there and stuff like that. We have to make sure that somehow something is done to compensate for that, the parking. So a land development plan is probably going to be the best suggestion. I know that's more work and there's a cost to it, but we have to be very sensitive of what's going on there. And of course, as we know, there was an attempt at a variance a year or two ago for a parking space, a lot there to the north of the property that he owns, residentially zoned, to use that for parking cars on, and that was denied by the zoning hearing board. So,
Right. And he's currently not doing so.
oh yeah, I know that. Yeah, we're aware of that. Oh
Right.
yeah. But I'm just saying, you know, knowing that the amount of volume of work that he does, it's phenomenal. As I said, this is a great success for him as far as business-wise. But you know, at the same time, is a parcel good for him? That's the question.
Gary, is Bonnell's currently using some spaces across the street on the west side of Evanston to park vehicles?
Over at the Saucery.
Excuse me?
Are some of the vehicles from Bonnell's currently utilizing spaces on the west side of Evanston at the Saucery?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I think it's probably the reverse. I think you'll find people from the
Overflow?
South Street parking on Bonnell.
And
really?
during off hours, I can see that, yeah. I think that, well, it's my opinion anyways, that because I have seen what Mr. Groh refers to, the parking, there can be some congestion in that area with cars parked on the street, right up to the street in the right of way frequently. I think that it would be unfair to the neighbors if we waived or granted the exemption for the land development plan. I think that the neighbors should have the ability to have a public hearing and come in and speak to, if there are no issues, tremendous. But if there are, I think that they need that ability to come in and have their voices heard.
Right.
I respectfully hear what you're saying, and I would just reiterate, though, that the zoning ordinance currently permits the parking ratio, and if there's an issue within the zoning ordinance, that could be something that could be examined, but we feel at the moment that we comply. And Mr. Bonnell's business is fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
And I hate to see him be put in a position to where he's limited in growing his business.
Yeah.
He does have aspirations to continue to grow, and he owns additional property to the east, and I believe he would, would be amicable to hauling out some of that area for parking.
Well, that may be a very good suggestion in that your plan shows the parking spaces that meet our zoning ordinance.
That's correct.
Unfortunately, what we're witnessing is the designated parking spaces being filled with additional vehicles parking in areas where there aren't designated spaces. So to lose some of the area, like Rick mentioned, lose some of that area where cars are currently utilizing, that makes what is already a somewhat difficult situation even worse. So yes, you show the spaces that are required by the zoning ordinance, but it from observation, it looks like what is being, the traffic that's actually being generated exceeds that. So.
Yeah. Gary, I'm sorry, Gary, you said that Mr. Bonnell owns property to the east there? He owns that other business, Bill?
He owns an additional parcel to the east that is shown on the drawing, and yet we're not calling out parking on it because right now it's not a consolidated deed with his larger parcel.
Right. See, that might be an end result of a land development plan, you know, to join those properties, and that may have a solution. That's why the thought of a land development, or the urgency for it, that is.
I understand, and I guess to go on to the other end of what the urgency is, it's not really a matter of complete urgency. Mr. Bonnell wants to grow his business.
Oh yeah, we want him to also.
Oh, I understand. But yet the construction season is closing out on us.
I understand.
And if we go into the full land development plan, it's going to push him into next year.
Okay.
And we would be willing to make some consolations and some form of agreement to move forward, but we would really like to get a permit soon.
Right. I understand that there.
Well, I guess the best, correct me if I'm wrong here, gang, but the best we could do then would be if you were to resubmit a plan that actually showed additional parking, would we then be able to reconsider the request for an exemption?
The bigger concern I have with the issue is that we're talking about an exemption for a commercial property that's adjacent to residential property. That's my biggest concern, is allowing, as you mentioned earlier, Mr. McGrath, allowing the residents an opportunity to have a public hearing to express whatever concerns they have about the development. And there's also other issues that would come up during land development plans, just screenings and setbacks and other issues like that. I think it's, in this instance.
We would certainly deal with all of the screening and setback issues, and as a matter of fact, we came in and reviewed the site plan with zoning and engineering to make sure that we comply with those issues.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I will second the motion that Mr. McGrath made to deny the exception.
Okay, so we have a motion.
Gary, I think it's the board's feeling that we want the neighbors to have that opportunity, and they won't if we offer the exemption provided.
Okay, so we have a motion to deny that request for exemption and a second on that. Do I understand? Yes. Okay. Mr. McGrath, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Okay, and I also vote yes on that there.
Thank you.
We'll try to expedite things, Gary, so that you can still hopefully get things started this year.
Appreciate your comments on that, Gary. Thank you. Okay. Item number 9, non-substantial land development plan amendments for, let's see, we'll start off with the first one, Millcreek Township School District for the new multi-purpose field that was approved earlier this year. Mr. Morris.
We're in receipt of a new drawing, a revised drawing that shows the elimination of a driveway that would connect the main parking lot area to Kahi Road, the addition of 7 parking spaces north of the tennis courts, and the reconfiguration of the proposed public sidewalk. The only thing that has bothered us about this drawing is the reconfiguration of the sidewalk near the entrance off 38th Street. Yes. We had asked the developer to provide the sidewalk away from the 38th Street pavement so it wouldn't be plowed in with snow and ice during winter. Well, the sidewalk has been moved further north, which is good. However, at the driveway, it doesn't continue going across the driveway. Instead, there's a jog. So that is one problem that we have seen with the plan. Other than that, we have no problems, and we recommend the approval.
Okay. Questions, comments from the board?
Well,
okay, we'll get Mr. Delfrat up here.
Okay.
Tom?
Question for Tom.
I'm assuming you're representing the school district on this? Okay, that's what I thought.
Mr. Morris, this amendment, would that trigger our new parking lot requirements regarding plantings?
I think Mr. Shaw should answer that question.
I don't believe as a non-substantial amendment it would trigger applicability of any new requirements. If it were treated as an amendment, potentially it would then trigger those items.
Okay, Mr. Delfrat.
Thomas Delfrat, representing the Millcreek School District, 3740 West 26th Street. In compliance or following up with the request from the Planning Commission to move the sidewalk away from 38th Street, we decided to take it all the way to the fence, which will be at the top of a retaining wall. That way there's no additional grass between the sidewalk and the fence, which would be difficult for us. Not difficult, it just adds extra maintenance for us. This way there's one swipe of grass. The jog around the entrance off of 38th Street served two purposes. First of all, the grade between the east side of the sidewalk connecting to the west side across that entrance is 5%, and we thought that was not good. It also then enabled us to take that 38th Street sidewalk by jogging it and connecting it to an existing sidewalk that runs north and south towards the tennis courts. So now you have a contiguous sidewalk that runs from the corner of 38th and Steratania to Kahi, 38th and Kahi, but it also now connects the inner part of the complex to better access to the tennis courts and then also the baseball and softball fields.
Okay.
So that side, there's an interior sidewalk then that connects. It looks like there's a bituminous.
It's an interior walkway.
Okay.
It's not really a sidewalk. It's not concrete, but it's an
It
interior
goes all the way
walkway.
around to the ball.
Correct.
Okay.
And it actually, if I'm not mistaken, it will not only go towards the tennis courts and then down into the ballpark, but it also takes you around the tennis courts and then west along the north side of the tennis courts.
Okay. Any other questions, John, Brian?
My only other comment, Tom, would be you, with the changes here to the access on Kahi, the driveway, you're only going to have one access out onto 38th Street from the larger lot. Although I guess we don't require that, correct? We wouldn't require that. I can possibly see issues if that lot fills and everybody wants to get out at one time. You're going to have, especially if somebody wants to turn left.
Well, remember that the community complex, the activities over there are not athletic other than the baseball field and the softball field. In the past, with the attendance at baseball games, the amount of parking that's in that lot would be not to capacity in our mind, and then the exit off of 38th Street would not be that difficult. A lot of people continue or would continue to park on that west lot that we put in, come in across Kahi. There will still be an access there, an access to parking on the north side of those tennis courts, which in my opinion will fill up too for baseball games. And then obviously you have exit there. That was one concern, Mr. McGrath, that we did look at. But in my opinion, in watching the amount of traffic that is over there for various activities like tennis matches and softball games, etc., we don't feel that there would be an inordinate amount of issue in exiting after.
What about the multi-purpose field? You don't.
That's a practice facility only.
So they won't be having.
No, we won't be having
there.
contests there or games there. That is a practice facility only. Now,
Okay.
we may have a couple seniors move their car from the west side of the lot over there for soccer practice and exit from there. But as it stands right now, it is a practice facility.
Mr. McGrath, I would add that with traffic signals at 38th and Kahi and 30th and Steratania, there's likely to be gaps created by the traffic signals themselves along that stretch. So I don't think a left turn movement's really going to be a problem.
And PennDOT didn't say anything about limiting the access?
No, no. And if you recall, prior to the west parking lot, when we used that parking lot for football games, especially the bigger ones, they used both of those exits, and neither one was any more congested than the other. And then just one addition with the addition of the restrooms. I know that we had long-range plans. We had the opportunity, both financially and planning-wise, to put those restrooms in there, which really enhances the entire facility.
Okay. Okay. Where else? Okay. I hear a motion on that.
Any other comments, Mr. Morris?
No.
Okay.
I would move approval of the plans amendments for the school district.
Okay, do I hear a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay. Mr. McGrath, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes. Okay, thank you. Next item under non-substantial land development plan amendments, Temple Anchi Hesed. This was approved at a meeting last fall, November the 24th. There must be a minor amendment to that. Anybody here to speak on behalf of this? If you would please, sir, identify yourself for the record.
I'm Bob Banks with Spalding Banks Project Management.
Yes, Bob. Yeah. Okay. Mr. Banks, what can you tell us about this?
Comparing the original land development plan with the plans now proposed,
Yeah.
we moved the building to the highest part of the site to minimize the cut and fill. We've gone to an underground storage facility for stormwater management,
Okay.
and that greatly reduces the impact of cutting the trees and grubbing. We've minimized the amount of grading by eliminating a huge amount of fill that was being brought in to have the building raised. We have the same number of parking spaces. We feel that this the savings or the changes that we made generated some cost savings which are needed by the congregation.
Right. Now, the footprint of the building is still the same or thereabout?
Actually, the footprint of the building went from 13,000 square feet to just over 10,000 square feet.
Okay.
So we've reduced the size of the building.
Reduced the size, and the parking remains the same, and you've taken some environmental concerns into play here, stormwater management,
Yes,
and...
it's completely changed. The stormwater is completely changed from
Right.
all that big pond
Okay.
to an underground facility.
Okay. Okay, so that's pretty much in a synopsis of what the amendment is about.
Yes, and I think we're in the spirit of, land conservation.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good. Any questions from the board here? Ryan, John?
Mr. Morris, am I mistaken, or do we require that the sidewalks be designated on land development plans?
That's correct. That's a requirement. If they so choose to seek a sidewalk deferral agreement, that could be completed at a later date. But the original plan must show the sidewalks.
Okay.
I don't have the minutes of that meeting, but when the plan was approved in November, wasn't there a note that the sidewalks had to be delineated on the plan?
I believe that there was, yes.
Are they shown or not?
Not on the south side, which fronts Simmerly Road.
So John, what you're saying is until there's been or if unless a deferral is granted, they need to be shown.
No, even if there is a deferral, they still have to
Still
be
need to be
planned
shown.
for in the event of
Okay.
future sidewalks being required.
So
So I guess what I'm putting out is as long as they're opening up this requesting an amendment, we should probably enforce that as well.
Right. Okay. Any other comments or questions? That's going to be a condition, I'm assuming, John, is that right?
Yes.
That, any action would be conditional on that
It's
sidewalk.
actually a requirement.
Yeah, but
Right.
making sure it's clarified
Yes.
on that, so, there's no issue down the
Okay.
road.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is a requirement that isn't currently on the plan, so I'm not inclined to grant an amendment without the plan actually conforming to the ordinance.
Well, if you mention that condition, okay.
Okay. Any other questions among the board here?
Nope.
Okay, I call for a motion.
You want to make the motion, John, with the conditions?
I'd move, well, don't we want to see where the sidewalks are proposed to go before we actually adopt the plan? Or approve the amendment to the plan? Rick?
There are some problems with locating the sidewalk along the Zimmerly Road right-of-way.
Okay.
It may be that the sidewalk will have to be moved further north, and the developer would have to grant an easement to the public for that location.
Okay.
I would actually move we table a vote on this until those issues are clarified or addressed.
Okay. We have a motion to table.
Well, that's a kind of a catch-22, because if then the developer comes in and asks for a deferral.
Even if a deferral is requested, it's only a temporary deferral. The deferral is for us to allow,
That's true.
is for us to
Not
allow.
an exemption,
them
it's a deferral.
Right, to not build it initially. We should
Correct.
still require them to plan for it and have a plan of action in place in the event that we were to enforce the sidewalk requirement at a later date.
Don't we have
Okay.
a deferral letter?
Not that I'm aware of. You may have one in, but I'm not aware of it, Bob.
Can I ask?
I was going to say, you're an engineer with Porter's, right? I'm sorry, I don't remember. You're with Porter Consulting?
I am not.
Oh, okay, I thought
I'm
you
with
were.
Spalding Banks.
Okay,
Steve Spalding, Spalding
Steve.
Banks,
okay,
project manager.
okay.
From our meetings with Matt Waldinger, I guess, Rick, I thought, I was under the impression that the sidewalk deferral was an item that was resolved.
As far as I know, it has not been, and until the board approves it, it is not. The board is seeking sidewalks on another project, and so far we do not have those, but the thought is that someday there could be sidewalks from Peach Street all the way to Old Zook Road. And with the residential property in Old Zook Road, that seems that it would tie in very nicely in that area. So if there's some way that we could have sidewalks provided on this lot, that would be the missing chunk.
And PennDOT's project that's occurring in that area that would adjoin that, they're not having sidewalk, they're not putting sidewalks in?
So far, it's not included in the contract. However, they've provided an area for future sidewalks.
I didn't understand that, okay, with Mr. Walden.
Okay.
How the deferral wasn't his.
If we designate on the land development plan the location for the future sidewalk?
Correct. That's what the board would require. And I
Well, that's what
understand
the
the
ordinance
construction
requires,
season
correct, right?
end is coming.
That's what the ordinance requires, correct, Rick?
Correct.
So it's not the board decide, it's the ordinance actually dictates that.
That's true.
Can we ask for an amended plan if we show the land development plan with that the location of the future sidewalk?
That's what I was suggesting. John, you're saying that we can't vote on an amended plan if we don't know where the sidewalk may be in the future. Right?
I would prefer to actually see the plan before we vote on it.
So my question ultimately would be is what I understood the purpose of today's meeting was that we were going to be able to potentially move forward with the amended plan. It was not being approved today, but this gave us the ability then, if the land development plan would not be formally approved today, but if, as long as by the 22nd of this month, Hill Engineering, or GPI as they're now called, completed the stormwater management review and gave their approval, that we would be able to seek final approval at the 27th meeting. So if we are able to have the land development plan updated with the sidewalks for the 22nd, when we needed to turn in, we needed to have the stormwater management review to Matt Waldinger, you're then voting on the 27th.
I believe we can approve both of them. I guess I'm not clear. Rick, can you clarify what?
Can I approach?
Sir, I'm not sure what direction the engineering department gave you, so I'm.
It's not, Rick didn't give me, it's my understanding, it was Matt Waldinger that we were working with, that we were, maybe I didn't understand today's meeting completely, but today wasn't about that we were going to be granted land development approval. It was just that we were going to be able to proceed with the amended route versus a full land development. But we still had items that we had to resolve prior to the formal vote, which if we were able to have the stormwater management review completed, we would have all items resolved and submitted to Matt on the 22nd, which would allow us to be, the voting would occur on the 27th.
If I could, just real quick, Rick, this plan has already been approved, the final approval has already been voted on by the board, am I correct?
That's correct.
So what he's referencing are satisfying the conditions of that final approval that was granted, I think, in the fall. Is that correct?
True.
Is there any action that the board has to take then once all those conditions are satisfied? I don't believe there is.
Nothing I'm aware of.
Other than signing the final recorded.
No. Unless they would go for the sidewalk deferral agreement.
Right. That would be one of the things they would have to submit a request for in order to avoid the obligation to install the sidewalk.
Correct.
Okay.
May I approach?
Yeah, Bob, come on forward.
I'd like to indicate a proposed location, but it's through wetlands that would require some investigation, but that would be a location that we would propose to put a sidewalk, but it would be asked, we will ask for a deferral. Since you needed a location for the sidewalk, that's what we're proposing.
Mark, do you want to take a look at that? I mean, is this going to suffice, a red line drawn and red line on a?
Well, we can have it back this afternoon.
I mean, I think the board could, if it's satisfied with the general location of this sidewalk, approve this subject to a final drawing being submitted in general accordance with what's shown here on this drawing.
Yeah. Okay. Did you see that drawing?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Okay, we have a motion to table it. That's what we have so far. You didn't have a motion to approve, or did you?
No, I didn't.
Okay,
but
so we have right now the action before us.
that's what I would make eventually.
Okay, so we have a motion to table right now for what, 2 weeks is what you're looking at, John? Or whenever they can get this thing updated?
Be the next meeting,
The
yes.
next meeting, which is the 27th.
So we'd actually vote on the complete plan.
Okay. So do I hear a second on that action to table? Okay, second request. Do I hear a second on that? Being none, that motion has failed.
Okay, I would make a motion for approval with the condition that the drawing be amended, showing the location of the sidewalk, that location be acceptable to our township engineer.
Okay. Do I hear a second on that motion? Second request, do I hear a second on that motion? I'll make the second on that motion. Mr. McGrath, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote no.
And I vote yes. Okay. We would like the copy of that drawing. Rick, do you have that drawing that Mr. Banks has? Okay, we will have possession of that until you can get us one from the engineering firm. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay. Item number 10, request for proposals for Wealth Management Fund to invest proceeds from the sale of the Millcreek Township Water Authority. Mark.
Yes, bids were opened on August 26th at 2 p.m. in the East Conference Room upstairs. We received a total of 6 bids. RBC Wealth Management proposed a package with a yield of 1.1% with a 0.1% fee for a net yield of 1%. Pliget which is the Pennsylvania, and I forget what the L stands for, Government Investment Trust.
That's right.
Proposed a product with a 1% yield, a 0.18% fee for a net yield of 0.82%. Erie Bank proposed a product that had a yield of 1.8% with a 0.14% fee for a net yield of 1.66%. First National Bank Wealth Management proposed a product with a yield of 1.52% and a fee of 0.25% for a net yield of 1.27%. Morrison Fiduciary Advisories proposed a product with a yield of 2.02% with a 0.29% fee for a net yield of 1.73%. And PNC Capital Advisors proposed a product with 1.79% yield, a 0.1% yield or fee for a net yield of 1.69%. Currently, I'm negotiating with Erie Bank, PNC Capital, and Morrison to see if we can do some adjustment on the fees. And a final recommendation will be presented for the next meeting.
For the next meeting, okay. Okay, any questions from the board on that?
No. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for your work on
Thanks,
that, Mark. Thank you. Next item on 10, tree and stump removal. Brian.
This is from the Streets Department. There are 3 trees that need to be removed along with the stumps. First is at 4618 Amherst. I believe it is 3141 Morning Sun and 3850 Woodcrest. Quotes were received from Dibbles for $1,100, J. Thomas Tree Service for $1,115. Quote was attempted to be received, but we haven't gotten it yet from Jefferson, so I would move that the work be completed by Dibble Tree Service for $1,100.
Okay, that's a motion. Do I hear a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. McGrath, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes. Thank you. Let's see here. Item number 11, Millcreek Township Sewer Authority Board vacancy appointment. Mr. Morgan.
Gentlemen, we have a vacancy to the Sewer Authority. I'd like to nominate Ms. Mary Stein for your consideration. Ms. Stein has a wealth of experience in government, public policy, and public relations, and I do have complete confidence that she'll be an active, engaged member of the board who will bring a fresh perspective and a dedicated work ethic to the position. For your consideration, I've included Ms. Stein's resume, and I would make a motion that we appoint Mary Stein to the Sewer Authority.
Okay. Do I hear a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay. Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Thank you. And of course, her first meeting will be this Thursday, 4:30. Sewer Authority.
Should be an interesting one.
Yes, it should be. Okay. Okay, item number 12, approval of Stonebridge Road Culvert Replacement Grant Agreement with the county. John, thank you.
Sure. Well, as Mr. Morris has kept us abreast, we have a culvert that needs emergency repair. As part of that project, the engineering department applied for a grant with the county planning department for bridge repair funds. The total estimated project cost is $125,000. The max award for the grant is $25,000, which the county has awarded to us. So all we need to do is sign the grant contract. So I'd make a motion to approve the contract.
Okay, do I hear a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay. Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Item number 13, approval of legal services agreement. Brian, do you have that, or going to go to Mark?
Yes, we have a proposed agreement with the former solicitor Evan Adair. There were a number of items that Mr. Adair was working on, obviously when he retired from the township. He and I met and discussed those matters, and it made sense for him to remain involved in a number of those matters moving forward. So once his agreement with the township terminated upon his retirement, he was required to submit an agreement to the township for your approval for his rates and work moving forward. He is proposing a rate of $200 an hour, which I believe is the same rate that he had charged for certain items as when he was a solicitor, and that would increase at $5 each year in accordance with the current township ordinance that covers those types of things.
Okay.
I've reviewed the agreement. It seems to meet all the requirements that would be necessary for a legal services agreement with an individual.
Right, yeah. Yeah, just as a matter of public record, of course, everybody knows Mr. Adair has retired, but there are some projects that he is working on, some cases, so we want him to finish those out rather than, as the saying goes, change horses in the middle of a stream. So it's much easier to have him continue on those through completion. So
There are also, from time to time, maybe items that our firm may not be able to handle things because of conflicts, and he'd be able to step in for those as well.
Right, yes. Okay, sounds good. Any questions from the board on that?
I'll move approval of the legal services agreement.
Okay, do I hear a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. McGrath, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes. Item number 14, a letter of support for Erie County Coastal Resources Management Program. John Morgan.
Gentlemen, we received a correspondence from Jim Cardman, who's chairman of the Lake Erie Coastal Zone Advisory Committee. I'll briefly read a statement. He says, I'm writing to inform you that the PADEP Coastal Resources Management Program is proposing a significant cut in funding to Erie County for local administration of the Coastal Resources Management Program. The county has a 35-year history administering this program and has consistently offered our municipalities support and planning services. This funding cut would likely result in the loss of a coastal zone planning position in the county. Gentlemen, I used to work for the county. I can tell you that the position is to locally administer several programs on behalf of the state, including grant funding programs that are awarded and ranked and prioritized by a local advisory committee, which Millcreek Township sits on, as well as Fairview and Harbor Creek and several other of our coastal municipalities. The proposed cut would significantly alter the ability of the county to manage that on behalf of the Erie County municipalities locally. He has provided a draft letter for us requesting us to submit letters of support to our local legislative delegation and the governor's office. I would make a motion that we support these efforts and issue a letter of support to keep local administration of this program in place.
Okay, do I hear a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay. Mr. Morgan, how do you vote on that?
I vote yes.
Mr. McGrath?
Yes.
And I also vote yes. Thank you. Thanks for your work on that, John. Appreciate it. Item number 15, Millcreek Township Sidewalk Accessibility Project Phase number 4, change order number 3. Rick Morris.
This contract was originally awarded to Empire Landscaping Snow and Construction Services on May 24th of this year in the amount of $150,112. Change order number 3 is necessary due to 25 additional ramps that had to be added to streets that were altered late last season. This triggered the necessity of the ramps to be compliant in accordance with ADA regulations. Change order also includes the deletion of 2 ramps from the original list that were not deemed necessary. The total amount of the change order is $52,375. $24,988 of this change order is to be covered under the current Community Development Block Grant funding for this year. The remaining $27,387 will be paid using public improvement funds that were already included in the engineering 2016 budget. So overall, the original contract amount, as I said, was $150,112. Change order number 1 amounted to $1,375 additional. Change order number 2, an addition of $5,200, and change order number 3, an amount of $52,375 additional, for a total adjusted contract price of $209,062 even. We recommend approval.
Okay. So something that started out at $150,000 is now increased by another $59,000.
Well, it has, but there are many more ramps that needed to be completed.
Right.
We already had a good contract price, and it made sense to increase the contract.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Morris, this is still under budget for what had been budgeted out of the CDBG program for this work, correct?
Well, it is, but we've exhausted that amount of money, and we have to dip into the public improvement fund for an additional $27,387.
All right, but that $27,387, I'll refer to Mark, that's still under what we budgeted out of the public improvement fund, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, so we're still good as far as the 2016 budget?
Yeah. just so the public knows, this is just part of the ongoing project of sidewalk throughout the township. And
Sidewalk
being in
and ramps,
compliance
yes.
with the orders. So, yeah, that's what we're doing with it. So.
And I would note that these ramps are ramps that were triggered by paving that was done late last season. So we're a little bit behind the 8 ball in terms of getting them in.
Right.
We don't have an option.
Do not have an option.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Any? I hear a motion on this here.
Well,
I'll move approval.
Okay. I'm sorry.
So one more comment. Mr. Morrison, in the request, and as the engineering department is not aware of the alteration at the time the original list was created, are we working to improve communications with Public Works so that we can plan ahead for these things? It sounds like this could have been planned for.
We're working in that area, but actually, as I understand it, this was so-called skin patching. There were minor overlays, and the streets department did not realize that this would trigger the ADA compliancy requirement, because it does not with PennDOT. We're allowed to go less than 500 feet with PennDOT. So they were observing the PennDOT rules and unknowingly violating the ADA regulations. So that's why we have to put the ramps in.
Okay. I hear a motion.
Well, and to John's point, these are ramps that we were eventually going to have to fix anyway, correct?
Correct.
Unfortunately, well, unfortunately, we do have a very, very good price for doing ramps this year, and money is in the budget to do it. So it's kind of like pay me now, pay me later. We're going to pay now.
Yeah. And cheaper price now, I think.
Correct.
Yeah. So, okay. With all of that said, do I hear a motion?
I'll move approval.
Okay. Do I hear a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay. Mr. McGrath, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes. Thank you. Let's see here. Item number 16, sidewalk deferral agreement. Lot 25 of Chadwick Fruit Farm subdivision. Gregory Rogers and Joanne Rogers, developer. Rick Morris.
There are no sidewalks in the area on Bliley Road, and we're recommending approval of this sidewalk deferral agreement.
Okay. And this is just until the other sidewalks are constructed, and then they would have to put theirs in.
That's correct.
That's what the deferral is about. Do I hear a motion to approve or deny?
So moved.
Okay. Do I hear a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay. Mr. McGrath, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes. Item number 17, stormwater maintenance agreement request for St. Mark's Episcopal Church. Rick Morris.
Stormwater management facilities will be owned and maintained by the church, and they've signed the approved form. We recommend approval.
Okay. Any questions, comments from the board?
I'll move approval.
Okay. Do I hear a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay. Mr. McGrath, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes. Okay. Okay, communications. Mark, anything from you?
Nothing additional.
Okay. Brian?
A couple quick things. This is from Ashley Marsteller, Director of Parks and Recreation. Would like approval for Rachel Caveney to be added as a lifeguard for the fall season at a rate of $7.95 per hour, and I'll move approval of that.
Okay, do I hear a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. McGrath, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Mr. Morgan?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes.
And here's one that wasn't on the agenda, but I received this morning from Jessica James, our recycling coordinator, just to announce that Millcreek Township will be a host site for the International Coastal Cleanup again this year on Saturday, September 17th, this coming Saturday, from 9 a.m. until noon along Walnut Creek within Bridger Park. If anyone would like to join the recycling and parks and recreation departments for the cleanup, please contact Ashley Marsteller or Jessica James. This is also a great opportunity for students who need volunteer hours for schools or for church.
Okay.
Just an announcement.
Okay. That's just an announcement there.
Yep.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. I've got a couple things here. First one comes from Millcreek Intermediate High School, or actually from McDowell High School. On October the 14th, it's a Friday, it's a homecoming parade for McDowell. They're asking for permission, and I would hope that Mr. Salvatore from the newspaper would cover this, make sure this gets put in there so people know. The school is requesting permission to open up the gates there on the premises, north end of the intermediate school, so that they can start staging the floats and units that are going to be in the homecoming parade. This will hopefully take some of the traffic off of Homestead Drive. The parade route will follow down Homestead to 27th Street to Caughey, and then south on Caughey to 38th Street. They're requesting no parking signs be placed along Homestead Drive, north and south of Meadow and West 27th Street between Caughey and Homestead, so that the parade units will be able to proceed through the area safely. This has worked very well in the past, as always. They're asking for permission for the gates at the intermediate school to be open at 5:10 so they can start the parade procession. They're asking for a police presence, which we always give, and closure of Caughey Road from 5:25 p.m. until 6:45 on that date. So just want to make that as a public announcement, or do we need to take action on it?
I think we probably should grant them approval.
Okay.
A little history on this: when the stormwater, this started with the stormwater detention basin, right, Rick?
Yes, it
yeah.
did. Yep.
When the big basin was put in up there, the township required a second entrance coming in from Homestead, and the agreement was that entrance would only be used for emergency services. The neighbors wanted to make sure that was not going to be a second route for school buses and parents dropping off their kids or students accessing the intermediate school. So that gate has been there, been in place for many years. I think that this is a very good suggestion, utilizing that driveway for staging the homecoming parade for two reasons. Number one, it gets the traffic off of Homestead, because we've witnessed it. Homestead, for an hour or an hour and a half, is completely blocked because they're staging the parade there. So the residents, and if there were the need for emergency services, would have a difficult time getting onto or getting through Homestead. This clears up that mess, and it's only going to be open for a very short period of time while the parade proceeds through the gate. Then it'll be closed up again for hopefully no need to utilize it again until next year. So yep. I would move that we grant permission to the school district to utilize that exit for the homecoming parade.
Okay, do I hear a second on that?
I will second.
Okay, Mr. McGrath, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Morgan?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes. Okay. And let's see here, from the police department, a request for fire police. This is after the fact. There was a mix-up in communication. This regarding the Barber Beast on the Bay over this past weekend. Utilized fire police from the West Lake, West Ridge, and Bell Valley fire departments. And that was held on the September the 10th between 8 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'll make that in the form of a motion to approve that retroactively.
I'll second that.
Okay. Mr. McGrath, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes. Let's see here. Millcreek Police Department. This comes from Director of Police Michael Tesor. Sir, I respectfully request the Millcreek Township Board of Supervisors approve the following at the public meeting of September 13th. 1, purchase of 2 tasers with accessories from Taser International of Scottsdale, Arizona, at a total cost of $2,294.90. Ask that this purchase be deducted from funds obtained through the Walmart Public Service Grant program, which requires this acquisition. I have attached the property a price quote for the review, and everything looks to be in line. I make that in the form of a motion for that purchase.
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. McGrath, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
And I also vote yes. And let's see here, I just have one little thing, just a comment, hats off, as we have been doing for the last several years, to Mr. Peter Fedorko, who owns property on the northwest corner of 12th and Peninsula Drive. course, as you know, Sunday was September 11th. He has allowed the Millcreek Fire Departments, all 5 of them, along with MPS, to utilize that area at around 5 o'clock and display that huge American flag in remembrance of September 11th. So we want to thank him publicly for allowing the fire departments to use that property. And it was a well-attended event there. So, and thank, of course, always to our fire departments here in the township. So that's all I have. John?
It's convocations next, I believe.
Yeah. You
I
wanna-
think Mark's going to handle it.
No. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, we'll have that go to Mark there. Mark, John, we'll go to your request next.
Oh, me next?
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll go to yours, I'm sorry.
All right, gentlemen, as administrator and liaison to the zoning and engineering departments, I'd like to request permission from the board to attend the annual Pennsylvania chapter of the American Planning Association's conference being held this year in Allentown, Pennsylvania. The conference offers education and training opportunities on a variety of planning, zoning, and development concerns that I believe are relevant to current issues in the township, including comprehensive plan development, adaptive reuse of structures, MS4 regulations, and blight remediation. The conference will be held from Sunday, October 16th through Tuesday, October 18th. So I would request permission to be absent from the building on Monday and Tuesday of that week. I'd also request the board to consider approving the registration and lodging costs for that conference. Conference registration $385, lodging and parking is $396.80 for a total of $780.80.
Okay, that's in the form of a motion. Do I hear a second on that?
Well, if one of you can make the motion.
okay.
I'll make the motion.
Okay. And I'll
John, are you
second-
going
I'll
to be
second
teaching
that.
the adaptive reuse?
There's actually a feature training session on adaptive reuse. That's,
Okay. I'm sure you'll have some comments to offer.
Absolutely.
I'll have
Of
something to
course.
add.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Motion
you
second.
motion,
Yeah.
I made a second on that there. Mr. McGrath, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Morgan, how do you vote?
well, I'll abstain.
I'll abstain, okay, and I vote yes. Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
I
you.
want to make one note. At the conference this year, the City of Erie's comprehensive plan is going to be awarded the Daniel Burnham Award, which is the award for excellence in comprehensive planning. So I'd like to take a moment to congratulate my friends and former colleagues at the County Planning Department who took part in that effort. It really is a great achievement and great honor, and our whole region should be proud of the effort that local planners have put into that. I'd also like to mention that their staff at the County Planning Department is very helpful in our comprehensive plan development, so hopefully we can be in line for that award next year. And I want to just make another public announcement that the comprehensive plan for Millcreek is ongoing at the moment. We have a community survey out there. Our plan is we call it Embrace Millcreek. We want it to be not just a plan, but also a public engagement initiative. So anyone out there watching or in the audience today, if you visit millcreektownship.com, please take a moment to take the survey and let us know what you think. That survey is going to be open throughout the month of September. If you'd like a hard copy of it, we do have those available right at the front desk in the Township Building. You're more than welcome to stop by and pick up a copy. So just want to put a little plug in for the comp plan.
Okay.
How about an update, John? How are we doing?
So far, we have almost 1,000 responses to the survey, which is extraordinary, really, in my experience with these things. If you look at statistical significance, really, if we had about 500 responses, that'd be a good sampling of our community. So to have nearly 1,000 is really, it just shows how many folks out there in Millcreek do care, do want to be involved. We also received nearly 500 individual open-ended comments that we're currently working on categorizing. So we're hopeful to have a preliminary report out to the Planning Commission in October and a more detailed report for the Planning Commission and the board to review by November.
Right. In fact, just a little side note on that, there was a letter to the editor today in the paper urging, it was a resident of Millcreek urging people to participate in that and to fill out the surveys. So I want to thank that person for writing it and also thank the Times for publishing it too.
Absolutely. The Times News and the local media have been great at helping us spread the word on this thing. And that's what we're trying to do a little differently this time around. Oftentimes, these kind of plans, you hire a contracted consultant who writes the plan, then you go out for a public hearing after the fact. And what we're trying to do is really engage the community up front, make sure we understand what the community's needs are, what their concerns are, so we can really tailor when the plan really kicks off and we really start digging into coming up with implementation strategies that we know where the community wants us to go before we even get started.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, thank you, John. Sydney, anything you'd like to say? You want to? We can get the microphone over to you. So if you just want to say something, it's up to you. You don't have to if you don't want. You're okay then? Okay. Next week, next meeting, you'll have a big speech for us, right? Okay. Mark?
Yes, I just wanted to remind the citizens that proposed ordinance to adopt a code of ordinances of Millcreek Township will be included on the agenda of the next Board of Supervisors meeting, which will be held on Tuesday, September 27th, 2016, at 7 p.m., at which time the board will consider that proposed ordinance. Copies of the proposed code and the ordinance, which would adopt that code, are on our website presently at Millcreek, www.millcreektownship.com. So if folks are interested in reviewing that, it is available electronically to review, and I believe hard copies are also available to hear. And John is displaying what the new code will,
it's too heavy.
what the new code will look like. So hopefully folks will take advantage of the opportunity to review what's being done here, and it really should help the citizens as well as us in reviewing different issues. The electronic version, as I understand it, is very searchable, very easy to use, and should be a great benefit to the residents of the township.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. Anything else you got? Okay. Cheryl?
I have the right to know report from August. We had 2 requests. One had to do with a request for investment report of the township's pension funds. And I had assistance from our treasurer, Mark Zakrzewski, on that one. We granted that request, and it was to a publication magazine that wanted that information. And the other request was for June and July reports from our tax collector. We get those periodically, and that was also a granted request.
Okay.
The cost for that was $5.86 for 2 CD-ROMs.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, Cheryl. Rick Morris? Nothing. Okay. The building permits report, building construction report for the month of August is available in the zoning department. The residential categories, we had a total of $1.5 million of construction value, and in the non-residential commercial end of it, $899,000 of construction value, for a total of $2.44 million of construction value. Of course, as we know, we're heading into the slow season, heading towards winter. So these are available in the zoning department. I think they'll be online here later this week. So, okay, citizens to be heard. Anyone? Being none, we'll adjourn the meeting. I call for a motion at 10:37.
So moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, unanimous? We're adjourned.
Nice
Okay.
job, Dana.
Thank you.
You're watching the Millcreek Government Channel, powered by WQLN Public Media.